Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Podcast. And it's Sunday today, but I got some topics that I just want to talk about regarding the NBA. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things today. It's a little bit more free-flowing if this is your first time seeing it. This is the Dreamerspro Podcast. We don't do as many episodes as we normally used to because of scheduling and other things that we've been trying to work on. But now that the playoffs are starting to come back and the basketball is coming back, we're definitely going to be doing more of the podcast. And in the future, we got something really, really interesting for you guys that I think you guys may like. But we're not going to drop that yet. But we got some goodies coming down the road that I think you guys are going to really enjoy. At least the avid Dreamerspro subscribers that really like the content a lot. We got something in the working for you guys coming down the pipeline in the next few months that I think you guys are going to really, really enjoy, as far from a content level, so we can engage more with you guys and make sure we're answering your questions and things like that. But that's something that we're working on, and it's going to be coming down the pipeline pretty soon. So today I got a bunch of different topics that I want to cover today. One of them is that the Clippers, one of the Clippers players got sick. Another one, we're going to be talking about the NBA bubble and how that's all going to play out as far as the rules and the scheduling and all of that. Then we're going to also be talking about the Lakers potentially getting a boost. And finally, this is kind of like a topic suggestion that came from one of the subscribers that said, talk about PG and Anthony Davis. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and ask the question: is Paul George actually better than AD? So we got a bunch of different things that we're going to get into today. But first of all, let's just talk about the news about Clippers shooting guard Landry Shamet. So all of you guys, or not all of you guys, some of you guys may be aware of the fact that Landry Shamet actually tested positive for COVID. And I'm reading this from slam.com. And he was tested positive, and he didn't really show too many signs, but all of you know that Landry Shamet is an integral part of the Clippers, and for this season, the guy is pretty much averaging he's averaging, I think, around 8 points a game or so. He's 9.7 points a game. He's getting them 1.9 rebounds, 1.9 assists a game. He's shooting 90% from the field. He's shooting 39%. He's shooting 90% from the free throw line. He's shooting 39% from the three-point line, which is very, very high coming off the bench. He's shooting 41.6% from the field, and I think a lot of that has to do with that. The majority of his shots are coming from the three-point line. I think he's a three-point specialist. And this season, he's playing actually 27.5 minutes a game. So he's an integral part of the team coming off the bench. And I was not surprised where a lot of people in the comment section spoke about, just potentially being a little bit worried, like, hey, did you hear about what happened with Landry Shamet? Now, it's been confirmed that he will not be traveling with the team this week when they go to Orlando. So I think it's important to say that just because he's not traveling with the team does not mean that he will not go and meet them in Orlando, because he possibly most likely will. It's just that he won't go with them initially because he has to be quarantined and, get better, heal himself or whatever it is. And then he's going to join them because, remember, the season is starting in, games are officially going to be resumed on July 30th, which I'm going to get to in a moment when I talk about, the scheduling for how things are going to play out in Orlando once the season resumes again. So Landry Shamet is an integral part of the team, but if we look at the Clippers roster, they have a really good bevy of players that they have, a good complement of players that even if, he got down there or he didn't get there on time and he wasn't able to be a part of the team when games resumed, it doesn't mean that, oh my God, the Clippers is over. Because if you look at their roster, man, these guys are stacked. They got Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, Zubac, Patrick Beverley, JaMychal Green, who can step up there. Although he's a power forward, he can fill in for him. You have Maurice Harkless, Patrick Patterson, Rodney McGruder, and also with the new addition of Joakim Noah. So they're a very, 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 very deep team. So I wouldn't be too, worried about the fact that if Landry Shamet is sick and all this stuff. I think the Clippers are going to be just fine, even though he's contracted this virus. I think he's going to be just fine. I just think that he's probably going to join the team a little bit later. He just won't be able to travel with them. So I wouldn't make too much of a big deal out of it. Even if players go down there now, which are going to be tested in quarantine, I think NBA players have to be quarantined for 48 hours. And when, they're going to be in their room for 48 hours. And even if somebody tests positive, they just have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. But the season starts up in pretty much a month. And even at that, they're going to be playing regular season games. It's not like as if they're going into the playoffs, which, again, I'm going to get to in a moment. So that's what's happening with Landry Shamet. And I think he's going to be fine. It's just that, this is something to be expected. And it's happened in so many of the other players like Kevin Durant and others. So Donovan Mitchell, if you guys remember, Rudy Gobert, if you guys remember, tested positive, and they're going to be there. So I wouldn't, start freaking out or anything like that. Now, let's move to the next topic, and let's talk about the NBA, bubble itself, and let's see how that, is really set up. So we're just going to talk about the timeline. Okay, so basically, teams travel to Orlando essentially next week between the 7th and the 9th of July. That's when teams are allowed to travel. Now, on the 9th to the 28th, that's when team training camps and scrimmages are going to start. So we're looking at about a 2.5 week period of training camp. And I think this is fantastic, and it's something that all of these players needed. And I've heard some coaches even come out and say this is a brand new season, like Kenny Smith, who's on TNT. He came out and said this is a whole new season. These guys have had 3 months off. He said this is an entire new season. So I think it's integral that teams are holding training camp just to get players reacclimated, get them back into, the flow of the game. So there's going to be training camp from the 9th to the 29th. Then the season resumes on July 30th, and that's when we're going to have the teams like the Lakers versus Clippers and all of that. And that's going to last all the way to the, I think, 15th. Then in August 15th to the 16th, we're going to have the play-in games. Those are for the teams that I think that this mini tournament for teams that I think to make it into the 8th seed. I think that's what that is reserved for. And then the playoffs begin on August 17th. That's when the playoffs begin. Then the conference semifinals begin on August 31st. So now we're talking about, now we're going into September. Then the conference finals begin on September 15th, which is essentially damn near 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And then the NBA finals are going to start on September 30th. And the last possible game available on the calendar for the NBA finals is going to be October 13th. So we're going to have basketball beginning from the end of July all the way up to October. And I think that the NBA is looking to do a quick turnaround because after that, they're going to hold the NBA draft. Then they're going to have some other things. And they're looking to start up this season, I think, on Christmas Day, which is something that the NBA has been proposing for quite some time now. So they're not competing with the NFL and all of this different stuff. Although, in this particular instance, they're going to have to compete with the NFL. But at least they're going to have a season. And most likely, we're going to get games resuming on December 25th, which is Christmas, and I think that's something that has to be negotiated. Now, it's important that I say this, okay? Just recently, I watched the game with Chelsea. It was a football club, I think the English Premier League, and I watched the game between these two teams in an empty football stadium, and it was a little bit weird. I was looking at it, I was like, huh? Because you saw this huge football stadium and there was nobody in the stands, and it was a little bit strange, but the teams seemed to look like they were competing with one another, but it was just a little bit weird to see it. So I think when the season resumes, it's going to be a little bit awkward for some of us as viewing fans to watch these games without, fans. And I think in football or soccer, it's a little bit different because if you ever watch a soccer game, a big majority of the game is the fans. When the guy misses a goal, the crowd goes, woo, you hear them screaming. So soccer is the fans add to another, they're like another player on the court, on the field, on the pitch. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what these games are going to look like without fans in the stadium. But I think after a couple of games, I think we're going to get used to it because we know that we'd rather see basketball with no fans than not have basketball at all. So I think we're going to get adjusted to that. So that's what's pretty much what the NBA bubble is going to be about as far as if we're looking at, scheduling. Now, let's move over to the Lakers because looks like the Lakers may have a boost that a lot of people were not expecting in Dwight Howard. Now Dwight Howard, if you guys remember, when Kyrie Irving made his statements of saying that he doesn't think that there should be any basketball, Kyrie came out pretty strong about it, and one of the players that supported him was Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard was one of those people that said, you know what, he's not sure if it's a good time to be playing basketball or not. He wasn't sold on the idea of coming back and playing NBA games, and he was a big proponent of that. But it looks like, the Lakers may be hopeful that Kawhi Leonard may join them in Orlando. Now, according to LakersNation.com, with the NBA return right around the corner, it looks like, sources said that Dwight Howard was on the Lakers Zoom conference call on Monday and giving them added hope that he will join the team for the Orlando restart. Now, I think from other sources, it looks like Dwight Howard is going to be available for the Lakers. Now, some of you guys will be saying, well, what's the big deal about Dwight Howard? He's only averaging 7.75 points a game, 7.4 rebounds, and less than 1 assist a game. Well, it turns out Dwight Howard is the Lakers' best defensive player, and he's also the player shooting the highest field goal percentage, I believe, in the league. Dwight Howard plays 20 minutes a game for the Lakers. He's shooting 73.2% from the field, and he's getting them 7.4 rebounds coming off the bench and 1.2 blocks. So it's safe to say that Dwight Howard is their defensive anchor on that team. He's right up there with Anthony Davis, who's probably going to be one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year, who I'm going to get to in a moment. So with Dwight Howard potentially back with the Lakers, I think is going to give them an added, it's going to give them a boost for some rim protection and from some of his veteran leadership that he has. So it's going to be a really big addition because the Lakers had already lost Avery Bradley. So for them to now lose 2 defensive stalwarts on their team, I think it was going to hurt them. So they lost Avery Bradley, and the loss of that is going to be felt, although they replaced him with J.R. Smith, who we spoke about not too long ago in the last podcast episode. But with Dwight Howard looking like he's going to join the team, I think it's going to be a boost to the Lakers team and also to their morale, knowing that they're going to have their defensive anchor playing with them and somebody that has played center his entire career that loves playing with contact, unlike Anthony Davis, who I'm going to get to in a moment. So I think that the Lakers having Dwight Howard is going to be a big boost, and I think it's going to help them for their championship aspirations once the season gets up and running again. So that's good news for the Lakers that Dwight Howard is looking like he most likely will be available for the team, and he's going to be able to travel with them between July 7th and July 9th, which is when teams are able to officially make their way into the Orlando bubble. Now, let's finish it off talking about Paul George and Anthony Davis. Okay, now, not too long ago, one of the subscribers asked a question. He's like, yo, man, can you do a video on whether or not PG is better or if Anthony Davis is actually better than PG? And I was like, okay. It sounded like something, it sounded pretty interesting to me. So I was just trying to think of the best way to produce that video. Now, as I said before, guys, we do these conversation videos that you look at, they take hours and hours and hours to prepare. So if I were to try to get through all of these topics, it would take me months to get through these topics. So I figured that the best way for me to cover this and cover it quick would be on the Dreamerspro Podcast. So I'm going to talk about that here. Now, I thought it was a great question. Especially going into the playoffs, because I believe Anthony Davis has a lot to prove because he doesn't have that much playoff experience. So if we look at Anthony Davis from a career standpoint, he's a 7-time NBA All-Star. He's been an All-Star Game MVP winner in 2017, actually. He's been on 3 All-First NBA teams. He's been on, 3 All-Defensive NBA teams and been on 1 All-Defensive NBA teams. He's led the league in blocks 3 separate times in 2014, 2015, and 2018. And he was also part of the NBA All-First Rookie team. Now, if you look at his numbers this season, he's the leading scorer for the Lakers. He's averaging 26.7 points a game, 9.4 rebounds, and 3.1 assists. If you go a little bit deeper into his numbers, he's playing about 34 minutes a game. He's shooting 51.1% from the field. He's shooting 33.5% from the three, which is pretty impressive because LeBron is shooting 34%. He's shooting 84.5% from the free throw line, and he's getting you 1.5 steals and 2.4 blocks. These are some gaudy numbers. And AD, going into the season, he said he wanted to be the defensive player of the year, right? Going into the season, he said he wanted to be the defensive player of the year. And looking at these numbers, man, this dude is putting up some fantastic numbers at 6'10" and 253 pounds. So AD is putting up some beast mode numbers. I just got to say that from the jump. Now, if we look at Paul George is a 6-time NBA All-Star. He's been on four All NBA teams, 2 All First Defensive NBA teams, 2 All Second Defensive teams. So he's been on 4 All Defensive teams. He led the league in steals in 2019, and in 2013 he won the Most Improved Player of the Year award. Now, this season, if we're comparing their numbers against each other directly, Paul George is averaging 21 points a game, 5.7 rebounds, and 3.9 assists. He's played 42 games, so Anthony Davis has played 13 more games because I think he's played 55 games. He's shooting 43.2% from the field. He's shooting 40% from the three-point line, 88% from the free throw line. He's getting you 1.3 steals a game. Now, if we look at their season stats, I think it's clear to say that Anthony Davis is having better numbers from a seasonal standpoint. Now, what's important to mention is that Paul George came off of shoulder surgery to begin the season, so he missed a bunch of games because of that. And he was coming back from shoulder surgery. That's number one. Number two, throughout the season, he's missed some more games because of a hamstring pull. So the guy has been in and out of the lineup, and therefore his numbers are not really reflective of his talent. Some of you guys may say, but what makes you say that? I mean, look at his numbers, man. It's clear that Anthony Davis is a much better player than him. Well, is it? If we look at Paul George's number last season, when he was fine, he averaged 28 points a game, shot 44% from the field, basically 39% from the three-point line, 84% from the free throw line, got you 8.2 rebounds, 4.1 assists, and 2.2 steals a game. Okay, now, and that's the year I think he led the league in steals. But Paul George also finished top 3 in MVP voting, and he also finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. And for me, he's the second best two-way player in all of basketball behind Kawhi Leonard. So if you were just to look at them from, this season, comparing their stats from this season, and one may say that, Anthony Davis is better than Paul George. But if you look at how Paul George played when he wasn't injured, he had better numbers. Or one could argue. So the question is, it comes down to preference. Who do you prefer? Do you prefer a scoring small forward, or do you prefer a really talented power forward? I think it comes down to preference. For me, I think these players are really close, okay? Because when Paul George is healthy, this guy is nuclear. He is. Don't be surprised that in these playoffs you can see him drop a 40 piece in some of these games. But also don't be surprised that Anthony Davis could do the same and get you a 35 and 20 rebound game with 7 assist game, because he's definitely talented enough to do so. Now, I think a great way to answer this question will be, let's see how these guys perform in the playoffs, and let's see what their value is going to be to their teams this season. I think at the end of these playoffs, we'll have a better chance to see really, who's truly better than who. Because remember, the last time the Lakers played each other, Anthony Davis dropped 30 points, PG dropped 31 points. So I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people think. I think a lot of people kind of underrate Paul George, which I think is a mistake. But I think if these two teams were to meet in the playoffs this season, I think it would be a good chance to really measure their value now that both of them are completely healthy after a 3-month break. So in my opinion, I'm going to wait and see. And I think the answer to this question is, I think I need more time. So what I want to know from you guys is, do you think that Paul George is better than AD and why? Or do you think that AD is better than Paul George? Whatever you guys think about everything that I said about in this podcast, Please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro, wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.